Okay guys, so now what I want to do is just go ahead and draw a quick and easy diagram of the arteries, and then I'll do a separate one of the veins. I really suggest that you do this at home. This is going to be the best way for you to get comfortable with the shapes that the arteries make. So we're going to start our story off with the heart, and then coming out of the left ventricle of the heart, that is going to be the biggest artery in the body, and all of the other arteries except for the pulmonary arteries are going to branch off of this artery. This artery is called the aorta, but the aorta has three different regions. At the top of this little arch right here, this is called the aortic arch, and then as it kind of goes up, makes a U-turn and kind of goes downwards. That at the part where it starts going down, that's called the descending aorta here. And then the descending aorta is going to go through the diaphragm. So this right here is supposed to represent the diaphragm. And then at the point where it goes through the diaphragm, it changes its name, and now it's going to be called the abdominal aorta. So we have the aortic arch, descending aorta, then the abdominal aorta on the other side of the diaphragm. Okay, so let's start going through the branches of the aortic arch. There are three of them. The first branch is going to be called the Brachiocephalic Artery, and the reason it's called that is because it has two branches, one that goes upwards into the head, that's the cephalic part, and the other one that goes into the arm, that is going to be the brachial part. Okay, so this area right in here before this split, that is the Brachiocephalic Artery. Okay, so brachiocephalic artery, which means brachial because of the arm, cephalic because of the head. Okay, so the branch that goes up towards the head, that is going to be called the right common carotid artery. Okay, so right common carotid artery here. And because it is not symmetrical between right and left, which I'll show you in a minute, you do need to designate right common carotid artery. And then the other branch of the brachiocephalic artery is going to be the right subclavian artery. And then the subclavian, sub is underneath, clavian is the clavicle, so the clavicles kind of run right underneath it. It kind of goes up over the clavicle and it comes back down. So at the point on the other side of the clavicle and at the edge of the first rib, the edge of first rib, in your textbook they'll call that the lateral margin of the first rib, but really it's just the outer edge of the first rib. It changes its name and it becomes the axillary. Axillary means armpit. Okay, so this is the armpit region. And then it'll change its name again, and the axillary artery is going to continue into the arm and become the brachial artery. And the brachial artery then splits, so it'll run down the humerus, and then once it gets down past that into the radius and ulna, the medial one is going to be the ulnar artery, and the lateral one will be the radial artery, and then that'll go down into the hands. Okay, so that's the first branch of the aortic arch. The second branch of the aortic arch is going to go up, running along the right common carotid artery. This one is called the left common carotid artery, carotid. artery. And again, because it is not symmetrical with the right, see how it branches off of the abdominal, sorry, not abdominal, off of the aortic arch. That means that you have to designate right or left, okay? So this is the left common carotid artery off of the aortic arch, and this is the right common carotid artery coming off of the brachiocephalic artery, which is this piece right here. Okay, the next third branch off of the aortic arch, that one is going to be called the left subclavian. Okay. Ooh, a little hairy there. Okay, so this third piece here, this is going to be the left subclavian. And again, because it is not symmetrical between right and left, you have to designate left. So the full thing that you would write out is left subclavian, and don't forget to say artery. Okay, left subclavian artery, which comes directly off of the aortic arch, whereas the right subclavian artery is coming off the brachiocephalic artery right there. Okay, so the left subclavian artery goes up and then kind of peeks out the other side of the clavicle and then kind of comes back down. So the clavicle is kind of right in this area here. And then this, and then again, at the edge of the first rib, you would then become the axillary again, and then the brachial. And then again, continuing on, brachial becomes the ulnar on the medial side and the radial on the lateral side. Okay, and that is the third branch of the aortic arch. Now let's continue on and look at the branches of the abdominal aorta. Down here in the abdominal pelvic cavity here. The very first branch of the abdominal aorta is called the celiac trunk. Okay, so let's see, I kind of drew that in the wrong spot. I'll just make it go this way. Okay, so the reason it's celiac trunk, the reason, whenever you see the word trunk, and you probably already saw it when we talked about the heart, is whenever you see a blood vessel with the word trunk in it, that just means that it has branches coming off of it. And so there are three branches of the celiac trunk. You have one that goes up. The one that goes upward is going to be called the left gastric artery. The left gastric artery is going to go to the stomach. Then you have another branch of the celiac trunk that's going to travel left, and it's going to travel left until it reaches the spleen. Okay, so here's the spleen, which is just left of the stomach. And the spleen is going to be fed by the blood vessel that is called the splenic. So it's like spleen, but there's only one E, splenic artery. So the splenic artery will take the blood from the celiac trunk and then travel all the way towards the spleen. So the splenic, you can see right there, splenic, the splenic goes to the spleen. Okay, so that's left. And then the branch traveling to the right, it's going to go towards the liver. I'm trying to draw the liver, it's a little funny. Here's the liver, liver's pretty big. That blood vessel that takes the oxygenated blood to the liver, that is going to be called the hepatic artery. And hepatic means liver or pertaining to the liver. So you'll see that a couple of times. So you have hepatic veins as well. Okay, so abdominal artery, celiac trunk, left gastric goes upwards towards the stomach, which kind of sits right about here. The splenic goes to the left towards the spleen, and then the hepatic artery goes to the right towards the liver. Okay, that's the first branch of the abdominal aorta. The second branch of the abdominal aorta is called the superior mesenteric. Okay, so superior mesenteric artery. And the reason it's called the mesenteric artery is because it's going to be embedded in the mesentery and it's going to supply and go to the intestines. Okay, so this is going to go to the small intestines. The next branch is going to be the renal. There'll be two renal arteries, one going to each side, and whenever you see the words renal, renal means kidney. So they're going to go towards the kidneys. Oops, that kidney got kind of ugly. Okay, so here are the kidneys and the arteries, the red ones going to the kidneys. Those are going to be the renal arteries. Okay, so again, red, that's important. I'll write that down. If it's red, that's an artery. The only exception is the pulmonary arteries. Okay, next one. So we have renal. The next one is going to be gonadal. So gonadal is what we call it when we don't know whether or not it is male or female. So what we're just going to generally go with gonadal arteries. And so the gonadal arteries are going to go towards the gonads. So what that means is if it is female, it's going to go to the ovaries. If it is male, it'll go to the testes. Okay, next branch is the inferior mesenteric. Okay, so whenever if you have a superior, you probably have an inferior too, and you do. Here is the inferior mesenteric artery. And the inferior mesenteric artery, again, they're going to go to the intestines. The superior mesenteric artery goes to the small intestines, and then the inferior mesenteric, oh, I didn't spell it right, mesenteric, I see. The inferior mesenteric artery will go to the large intestine. Okay, and then from there, the abdominal aorta is going to split and then split again, sort of like tree roots. Flip this up. Okay, so here's your gonadal. There's your, this one here is the inferior mesenteric artery. Then here's still the abdominal aorta. From there, it'll split into the common iliac arteries. So these two here are the common iliac, and common here means that it's going to split again, and it's going to split into the internal iliac artery and then the external iliac artery. Okay, so abdominal aorta, common iliac artery, then internal iliac artery, external iliac artery, and then what happens here is the edge of the abdominal wall, right? So here's your like stomach area here, and what happens is the blood vessel actually leaves the internal cavity, so leaves the abdominal pelvic cavity, and it's going to come out and be very much more superficial and kind of run along the muscles there. Okay, so once it leaves the body wall, so here's the boundary of the body wall. Once it leaves the boundary of the body wall, the external iliac artery is going to become the femoral artery. And then the femoral artery will continue down until you get to the knee. Once you get to the knee, it's been called the popliteal. Popliteal. Popliteal means knee. Okay, so that's it.